Okay, can you guys hear us? Oh, can you hear me, particularly right now? Oh god, I'm gonna need to do some that's fucking stupid. But again, I should have fucking expected it. I was willing to take the L on this because I kind of figured this might happen. Okay. Give me a sec, guys. Need to get the new chat. Yeah. So, as Kevin is my witness, I will now read off what YouTube had sent me. Hi, Dark Knight Dante. Due to copyright match, your stream is interrupted. Video title: Let's appreciate Hell of a Boss Pilot to see episode 2. Streams are interrupted when copyright content is detected. After copyrighted material is no longer being streamed, streams are automatically re-enabled.
True, that's exactly what it said.
You want to know something that's even more bullshit? You want to know the thing that kind of claws at me just a little? Because it's utter, and why that particular email bugs the fuck out of me. What bugs me the most about that is the fact that, well, throughout my entire payday stream, I was listening to copyrighted music.
Yeah.
So that whole stream should have been taken down. Like, it'll get copyrighted after the fact. But I've never had this happen.
No, man. I'm about it in a way. Appreciate or reviews of any kind bring only more attention towards whatever's being watched. Mm-hmm. It allows for people to potentially reach an audience they wouldn't have had otherwise. Ridiculous. Absolutely.
It is. No, because they don't stream it. I streamed it. So, yeah. That's... But again, like I said, the reason why that bugs the fuck out of me the most is mainly because my gameplay streams on Mondays and Fridays are filled with copyright music. But I've never had that. Like, I've had my streams taken down because I'm sure someone was false copyright claiming me and had the streams taken down. But I've never had that email before. Never. This is the first fucking time. It's quite fascinating.
Sucks, man.
So, yeah, pretty much. That be the question. What now?
That was a plan, people.
Oh, don't ask them to do that. Jesus Christ, you're just asking for fucking trouble. Like, holy shit. I got nothing prepared, Zion. That's the problem. I mean, there is something I could possibly do. Okay, you know what? We're gonna switch gears. Let's see if this gets taken down. Yes. If I watch that Gundam, I would probably get fucking pulled as well. And again, you know the worst thing is that is a show that has the worst part is that is a show that has been obviously reacted to in its entirety on YouTube as well. Hello, Blazer. I do have a backup. Hopefully he doesn't take us down, and the worst thing is, it's not like we were watching it uninterrupted. I was interrupting it to bring things up. I was adding commentary to it. Like I said, I do have a slight backup. Slight backup. When I can find it. There it is. Just bear with me, because like I said, all that went to hell. So this is a channel I want to highlight. I'll have to put in the stuff afterwards. Not that. Let's get that off screen. This is Gamers, or however you say it. I just call it Gamers with a V. And this is this Rise and Fall series. Now, what's fantastic about this? What's fantastic about the Rise and Fall series is the amount of detail it goes into.
Cold, dark, and endless. The Earth's final frontier has long served as the backdrop for all manner of horrifying fiction.
That, and the dude has a voice that melts steel panties. Like, the dude has a voice that would melt fucking... like, goddamn. Huh.
From the heart-pounding terror of Alien to the cerebral drama of System Shock. Where other classic horror settings require the addition of fantastical stalkers to put the lives of their characters at risk, Space alone tears apart anything that dares confront it unprepared, uncaringly, unflinchingly, and in total silence. When EA Redwood Shores debuted the survival horror game Dead Space in 2008, they succeeded in both capturing the inherent wickedness of its setting and delivering an experience that played more sublimely than any other horror game before it. Rather than attempt to generate tension with sluggish tank controls and other arcane mechanics, Dead Space made Isaac Clarke's hellish march through a zombie-infested flagship as intuitive to control as it was scary. Players lapped it up. Redwood Shores became Visceral Games, and a small barrage of cross-media content followed, including an unexpectedly solid spin-off on the Wii.
Oh, he ain't lying.
A greater sequel.
He ain't lying. So here's the thing. Let me give my thoughts on the Dead Space series. I fucking love the Dead Space series. I think 1 and 2 are fantastic. 3's alright. Extraction is a sleeper hit. Extraction is a rail shooter, like House, in the same vein as House of the Dead, Time Cop, Virtual Cop. But it's incredibly solid and translates the main game to a rail shooter insanely well. The thing is you'll realize throughout the entirety of this why Dead Space itself failed, and it's again due to corporate expectations, which is unfortunate. And also, you'll also notice, even if you go back, I could say mainly on PC, but even on console, you go back and look at Dead Space 1 and 2, I don't know what it is. Horror seems to be one of those genres where the graphics just age incredibly well. Like, Resident Evil Remake is a good example of that. That game still looks fantastic today.
Eventually, however, the demands that the franchise cater to a wider audience caught up with it, and Visceral Games released Dead Space 3, a solid action title that exemplified its creator's competency, but failed to fully capture the sense of horror that made its predecessors so beloved. The series faded away, and its developers, despite their pedigree, would follow shortly after. This is the rise and fall of Dead Space.
I think I Let's Played Extraction as well. I think I did. In fact, I think I've Let's Played all of the Dead Space series, including the DLC. The 7 DLC was bullshit though, because you can only get that on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Dead Space is body horror.
Their corporate headquarters from San Mateo to Redwood Shores in 1998. They founded a new development studio at this location called EA Redwood Shores. Eager to establish itself amongst its parent company's growing roster of developers, the eponymously named studio would go on to release the third-person shooter Future Cop LAPD in August of that year, before devoting the next decade of its existence to making a small mountain of licensed games. From Tiger Woods to James Bond, Redwood Shores pumped out movie and celebrity tie-ins quickly and consistently, earning more than enough cash to...
One of my favorite games of all time, 007 Agent Under Fire. One of my favorite Bond games of all time. One of my favorite fucking games.
Remain in EA's good graces, and decent, but rarely great reviews. The team was happy with its output, but by the mid-2000s, it had become interested in breaking out of its menagerie of licensed games and developing something a little bit different. System Shock 3.
Leave this place now.
It'll never happen.
We will wound you.
We will never get System Shock 3.
The first two System Shock games were landmark first-person adventures developed in the 1990s by Looking Glass Studios. Centered on the player's attempts to defeat the malevolent AI Shodan across the darkest reaches of space, the games blended survival horror and role-playing elements into sublime experiences that would serve to influence many titles to come, such as BioShock and Prey.
That's what you call
Redwood
old school
Shores
PC
technically
gaming
wasn't
in a
allowed
box.
to develop a new System Shock game, while EA owned the science fiction series trademark. System Shock's development rights had fallen into the hands of an insurance company after Looking Glass's closure in 2000.
That is so bizarre.
And yet, despite both this and a sense of apprehensiveness at the thought of taking on such a beloved universe, the wheels on the unproduced threequel would slowly begin to turn within the studio, until a little game called Resident Evil 4 was released in January of 2005.
The game that changed it all. Like, for better and for worse. For better for the games industry, for worse for the Resident Evil series.
The fourth entry in Capcom's iconic survival horror franchise ratcheted up its predecessor's slow and methodical gameplay into a much more action-oriented experience, with an over-the-shoulder camera providing a more intimate view of the game's world, and a wider assortment of firearms and enemies creating more intensive battles than ever before. The game took the industry by storm and convinced many a developer, including Redwood Shores, to rethink their current ambitions. Speaking to PC Gamer in 2017, Dead Space designer Ben Waynat explained that upon its release, Resident Evil 4 proved so popular among the team that they almost immediately dropped their plans to create System Shock 3, and instead began scheming an entirely new survival horror property, one that would still be set among the stars, but that would ape Resident Evil's mechanics and formula. A game simply titled Dead Space.
Here's the thing. The amount of things that that Resident Evil 4 did right, the one thing it's credited for unjustly is changing from tank controls. And if you played Resident Evil 4, you know that it never changed from tank controls. It's basically tank controls with the camera behind you. I can't remember which one did that. I think Dead Space might have changed that. I'm not too sure. It's been a while since I played Dead Space. I'm going to play it again soon, actually. But yeah, in my opinion, Dead Space changed a lot of good, but also changed a lot for the bad. Because it started the downfall of its own series. Because then you had Resident Evil 5, which was even less horror. Then you had Resident Evil 6, which was not horror at all. Until we got to Resident Evil 7, where they actually reintroduced horror. They basically aped the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with the fucking hillbillies from the Hills of Ice. Minus the radiation and more mold. In the literal and figurative sense. But yeah, it's also funny to note how it went with the working title Dead Space, and that's what it still ended up being. It's a fantastic thing. I love it when that happens. It's like it was meant to be.
Started a little over 2 years ago. It just felt like it was the right time to go.
Also, Isaac Clarke has to be the most the most toughest Jenga I've ever seen.
And president of the company about
because this motherfucker will fall apart like Jenga
Understanding
pieces.
that the heads of EA would likely be weary at the thought of them launching a new franchise, Glenn Schofield, Redwood Shores' then general manager, would forego directly pitching Dead Space to them. Instead, he and his team would spend a long time developing and showcasing small yet highly polished prototypes of this concept to EA in order to gradually build up their parent company's confidence in its future prospects.
See,
their strategy worked. After much coaxing, EA accepted the project.
this is what's missing. See, if you notice, like, because this is the worst thing. Games seemingly get developed off of an idea. Just the thoughts of an idea, like the fucking vapor of an idea. Nothing you can grab onto. It's imaginary. That's how Anthem started. They got funding for Anthem and they had shit. The game was in development and like you don't know this. I've got to kind of break this down for Kev. That game was in development for years. They didn't have any idea. The team themselves didn't have an idea of what they were making until they saw a demo of it at E3. They didn't even know the fucking title of the fucking thing. They had shirts printed with a different name than the name that was on the trailer.
Wow.
That's what's missing. That's what's missing from gaming these days is think that developers need to come with small demos like this to the publishers. We know what we're doing. We have this to show you about what we want to do. Because it feels like not enough do that. It seems like just from the outside looking in that a lot of games get greenlit off of ideas instead of anything tangible.
Yeah.
And development began in rigor. In many ways, crafting their new horror property was easier than Redwood Shores expected it to be. New and gruesome ideas to help distinguish Dead Space from similar games flowed easily and from all corners of the team making it. And EA, a company with a stigma of making its games as safe and appealing to as broad an audience as possible, let Redwood Shores get away with most of them. But its development was also haunted, ironically, by the very game that helped spur it into existence. Speaking to Gama Sutra in 2011, Wright Bagwell, who served as a creative director for much of the series, would reveal that their decision to copy Resident Evil 4's mechanics eventually started creating headaches for them, explaining that they initially assumed that in order to provide a tense experience for the player, their game needed to cap how much control the player could have.
No.
And Resident Evil 4's control scheme, which featured contrivances such as being unable to walk and shoot at the same time, seemed like the best one to borrow from. But once Redwood Shores began focus testing the game, the team would consistently get complaints about these very contrivances from players. It didn't increase their tension, it just frustrated them further. As a result, most of these mechanical restrictions were removed, and the player's movement speed was increased, albeit slightly.
Yeah, because that's
After
the
being
thing.
officially unveiled via Game Informer in September of 2007, Dead Space would be accompanied by a bevy of cross-promotional content leading up to and at its launch, including a comic book series, an animated feature film,
Which is fantastic. That fucking film is great. I love that film. That film is gruesome as fuck. It's basically like a Western anime fucking gore fest. It's quite wonderful. Thank you. Now... Oh, there was another point. Sorry, guys. There's going to be a breakdown analysis of a lot of this stuff.
players.
Yeah, about control. Yeah, you don't want to take away too much control from a player. That's one of the reasons why I absolutely fucking hate what I call walking horror games. You've got no way to defend yourself, and you're absolutely limited. And my point was proven fact when Resident Evil 2 came out. That game scared the fuck out of me. But because it worked, it doesn't limit you as much as games like that do. And with Dead Space, it proved that as well. You don't need to limit a person, you just need to give them something to be scared of.
Yeah.
In this, it's the necromorphs. And your dwindling ammo supply. It's also atmosphere, the whispers in the corridors, like, did I just see that? The indestructible monster. Like, if you look through the tropes of horror video games, the most successful ones have always done these things. I'd say the ones that stand the test of time. Limited inventory management, weapons to be able to defend yourself, scary enemies that you can defeat, indestructible monsters that you cannot defeat, and it being basically pitch black. Yeah. So you look at games like Dead Space, you look at games like The Evil Within, because The Evil Within is like not entirely scary, but like the oppressive atmosphere of The Evil Within is scary in its own right, because it follows these same tropes. Resident Evil 2, Dead Space, all of them follow these tropes. Silent Hill is another one, actually. Silent Hill is another one that follows these tropes as well, specifically Silent Hill 2.
By the way, both of them. There is a trope and there is a set of, I would almost say requirements I need to give someone that feeling, not make can't physically.
There is more fear, in my opinion, there is more fear in being able to do something and knowing it will fail than not being able to do something and knowing it will fail. Because you're not taking control. Don't you have unlimited? But you don't have unlimited ammo, and it also follows some of the tropes, like especially in like an invincible enemy, a stalker kind of enemy, like Mr. X, Nemesis, Pyramid Head, like similar trope. The indestructible enemy, the stalker enemy, the one that will follow you throughout the entire game. Bollocks, I lost my train of thought. God damn it. Stop. I'm on a roll, I forget things. Like, in one ear, out the other. Yeah, like those kind of games. Hide and seek horror. I hate hide and seek horror. In some ways, hide and seek horror can work. In very rare cases. It's one of the reasons why I defend Five Nights at Freddy's. Because Five Nights at Freddy's doesn't work on hide and seek horror. It works off of anticipation. You know it's coming. You know they're going to jump scare you. It's the anticipation. The anticipation of knowing that it's coming is what gets you and kills your nerves. The jump scares are not. The jump scares are the icing on the cake. You're already at maximum fucking anxiety by that point. Alright, anyway.
It didn't increase their tension, it just frustrated them further. As a result, most of these mechanical restrictions were removed, and the player's movement speed was increased, albeit slightly. After being officially unveiled via Game Informer in September of 2007, Dead Space would be accompanied by a bevy of cross-promotional content leading up to and at its launch, including a comic book series, an animated feature
I recommend
film,
watching this movie,
and an
guys.
alternate reality
Seriously.
game-esque website called KnownKnownSurvivors.com. But in the end, while all of this content helped build up hype for the nascent horror series, it would be the game itself and these mechanical changes that were made to it during production that would make it a star when it would release for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and PC in October of 2008.
How many times you watched
Like I
that
said,
thing?
you follow those tropes.
Guess you really
You look
miss
at a
it.
lot of games that stay in
Don't
people's
worry,
minds
we're
as
almost
classic
there.
horror games. They
You'll be able
follow
to
those
look it up once we're
tropes.
on board. Sounds like you do have a lot of catching up to do.
When the starship USG Ishimura sends out a distress signal for reasons
Oh,
unknown,
by the way, shout outs
ship
to
engineer
Tat.
Isaac
Hold
Clarke
on.
and a small team of emergency responders are
Shout outs to Tat's Top Videos for making me understand just how big that fucking ship is. The USG Ishimura is fucking enormous. Like, it'd have to be for what it does and the amount of floors and everything you go through anyway, but that ship is bigger than even I thought it was. It's massive. It's fucking huge.
sent to invest. The Ishimura is a planet cracker, designed to break open planets so they can be harvested for their resources, and employs scores of personnel,
For example,
including Nicole, Isaac's girlfriend.
You know the Enterprise?
Isaac
bigger
is
than the
deeply
Enterprise.
concerned for her well-being, but is
All of
forced to put his worry for her to the back of his mind when the Ishimura is revealed
Larger,
to be
I think it's
infested by
larger than the largest
necromorphs,
Enterprise ship.
repulsive monsters created from reanimated corpses.
Isaac, get the hell out of there! The doors are locked! Run!
With nowhere else
Isaac
to
made
go,
the whole,
Isaac is
Mega's
forced to
hole
make the
again.
most of his engineering equipment, which includes
No,
a plasma
Isaac made the
cutter
whole thing
typically
up.
used for mining, to restore the Ishimura to working order, help his crew...
Hold up,
find
wait,
a way
wait,
to
wait, hold up, wait a minute.
and discover Nicole's,
I just noticed that.
which
Give
includes
me
a
a sec.
plasma cutter typically used for mining, to restore the Ishimura to working order, help his...
Oh no! Oh, that's unfortunate. That's not how the reload for the pulse rifle was meant to be. The pulse rifle bugged out in reload. If you look, anybody who's played Dead Space knows that's not how the pulse rifle reloads.
With nowhere else to go, Isaac is forced to make the most of his engineering equipment, which includes a plasma cutter typically used for mining, to restore the Ishimura
That whole
to working
front
order,
is meant to go
help his crew
down,
find a way out
up
of their
out the
current
cartridge, and he
predicament,
slaps another
and
one,
discover
brings it back
Nicole's
up
ultimate fate.
like a double barrel shotgun.
Unlike most enemies in video games involving aiming and shooting, the necromorphs are resistant to headshots, instead requiring the player to aim for and dismember their limbs in order to destroy them effectively. The presence of zero-gravity environments and air-strapped spacewalks throughout the Ishimura only further complicate matters, turning Isaac's confrontations with the monsters into horrific puzzles that juggle the player's resources, spatial awareness, reflexes, and quickness all at once. Thankfully, Isaac can use stasis and kinesis modules to briefly slow down and throw enemies and objects, and he can upgrade his inventory and rig with various in-game currencies. These benefits grant Isaac enough of an edge
No
to keep going,
microtransactions needed.
but never enough to hand him complete control of the situation.
Right, so there's something as well. Once he's done talking about this one, once he's done talking about 2, I'll give my thoughts on 1 and 2, because they are vastly
Dead
different
Space
in
would
my
be met
opinion.
with widespread critical acclaim across the industry, with critics commending its gameplay for the ways in which it expanded upon that of prior horror titles, as well as the haunting immersiveness of the Ishimura. It felt as if every part of the experience was working in near-perfect synchronicity to try and envelop the player in its fiction, from its expertly crafted sound design and graphics, to the way in which Isaac and his adversaries lumber through the ship's blood-soaked hull.
No, this is my backup, Iron. This was my backup.
Even the game's UI played its part. Rather than exist as a series of icons in the screen's corner that represented the player's current status, nearly every UI element was baked into the game's diegesis, with Isaac's health displayed on the back of his suit.
Shoutouts to Visceral. Shoutouts to Visceral and Dead Space in general for having, in my opinion, one of the best in-universe minimalist HUDs ever. Like, that's all you get. That's all you get. That the spine thing's his health. The semicircle is the stasis. And the ammo shows up when you bring up the gun. That's all you need, and it did so well. Like, it was fantastic. Like, that is as minimalist as you can get while conveying all the information that you need. They did it the best. And in my opinion, to this day, are still the only ones to do it this good.
And stores holograms of their wares in front of Isaac. Not all of the game's design would be met with praise. Some felt that the experience worsened the further it progressed, with the objectives that Isaac is forced to complete gradually becoming more repetitive and monotonous, and his encounters with enemies less scary. A fair few would single out the game's bosses as being particularly weak, criticizing them for leaning more heavily into being big and bombastic than tense and adrenaline-inducing.
Oh, that's true.
But these
there's only
issues
one
weren't
real
enough
boss.
to stop pundits from quickly crowning Dead Space a worthy evolution of Resident Evil 4's tenets and a hallmark entry in the horror game genre.
Isaac lost weight between games, but it makes sense why he did.
As a result of Dead Space's success, Redwood Shores
No. There is no microtransactions in Dead Space or Dead Space 2.
2009, establishing them as its premier third-person action developer in doing so. EA would also establish international branches of Visceral the following year, in Montreal and Melbourne. The company hoped that Visceral and its sister studios would be able to replicate Dead Space's magic and create several new franchises on which they could hang their hat. However, while Visceral would indeed go on to develop a small handful of non-Dead Space titles following this rebranding, none of them would experience the same acclaim as the horror franchise. Dante's Inferno, a 2010 hack-and-slash action game based on the Divine Comedy, would be derided for being uneven and overly derivative of God of War. And 2013's Army of Two: The Devil's Cartel, which Visceral developed alongside its Montreal branch, would be criticized for feeling generic and forgettable.
Devil's Cartel was
studios
bad.
would also attempt to develop an action game about Jack the Ripper during this time. According to a 2018 investigation by Polygon's
The first
Alex
Army of Two was
Riviello,
good.
the game titled The Ripper would have reimagined the infamous serial killer as a crazed vigilante that fought demons in the streets of London, and would have featured an asymmetrical multiplayer mode that would have pitted technological Freemasons against bloodthirsty vampires. However, it ended up being cancelled after running into development issues. Despite many well-intended attempts to branch out and try new things, Dead Space would remain Visceral's only major claim to fame for the next half-decade. But the second title in the studio's horror series was to be a little different than its first one.
One of the best rail shooters I've ever played.
Don't take another step. Oh, I warned you!
Several months before the original Dead Space's development came to a close, EA greenlit production of an entry for the Wii. The publisher had seen decent returns on Nintendo's motion-controlled console with kid-friendly fare like My Sims and Rock Band, but wanted to see if they could take advantage of its massive success with their more adult-oriented titles. In a 2009 interview with GamesIndustry.biz, Jens Uwe Intat, EA's European VP, would state that the company already suspected that many Wii owners also owned a PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360, and that such players typically enjoyed more mature titles on the latter devices. But on the off chance that they were wrong about Wii owners' interests, and this game, which would come to be titled Dead Space Extraction, proved lucrative, it could open the door for similar titles in the future.
I don't think it's
In
sold
order to
well.
accommodate for the Wii's weaker hardware, Visceral enlisted the help of Eurocom, an English studio with experience developing licensed games for the console, and made a variety of concessions to the first Dead Space's design. Rather than allowing the player to move wherever they chose in third person, Extraction would be an on-rails first-person shooter. This way, Visceral and Eurocom could minimize the amount of characters and environments that needed to be shown at any given moment.
It's also got a hell of a
maximize
story.
the graphical quality of those that would be, as well as better utilize the Wii's unique functionalities. They weren't the first developers to do something of this nature. Resident Evil: The Umbrella Chronicles, which launched on the Wii in 2007, had likewise adapted its series third-person
Another
action
amazing
to an
rail shooter
on-rails
as well.
first-person shooter, and received a decent amount of acclaim. But Extraction would receive even more when it would release in September of 2009. Taking place shortly before the events of the first game, Extraction follows a group of colonists as they fight to survive at the outset of the necromorph outbreak, traveling from the planet of Aegis 7, which the Ishimura was in the
Aegis
process of
7!
cracking open, to the Ishimura itself in search of help. Despite being on rails, much of the original Dead Space's combat mechanics and features are present and accounted for, with the player able to tear apart necromorphs limb by limb to defeat them, slow them down and move them about using stasis and kinesis, and, like most other rail shooters, Extraction allows a second player to drop in and play cooperatively alongside the first. Critics were taken aback by how earnestly Extraction attempted and succeeded in replicating its HD brethren's look and feel, as well as the quality of its pacing, replayability, and motion controls.
Again, and this is also on PlayStation.
What could have easily been a shoddily constructed third-party experience for Nintendo's home console instead became one of its most warmly received.
Which is funny because
It
that's
wasn't a proper
free.
sequel, but it was an immensely strong game in a genre typically designed to hustle quarters out of arcade goers.
Which is interesting because just off of the first Dead Space game, we have three stories. We have Isaac's story, which takes place before, which takes place during Isaac's story, inside the Ishimura after the outbreak. You have Extraction's story, which takes place slightly before and then after the and then during the Ishimura, the initial Ishimura outbreak. But then you have Dead Space Downfall, which is the animated movie, which takes place during that outbreak, but also expands on how the Ishimura found the distress signal.
Lots of it.
Yeah, there is a buttload of lore to Dead Space 1. There's a lot of stories. This is Blitz.
Unfortunately, the strong critical reception didn't translate to sales.
No, it didn't sell well.
Like other mature Wii games released in 2009, such as Mad World and Silent Hill Shattered Memories, Extraction would fail to find an audience on its console, proving EA's concerns about its user base correct.
Because, as much as people don't want to admit it, the Wii sold a fuckload of consoles, but it was mainly for families. Like, a lot of families bought consoles for family entertainment in the front room.
Yeah,
and that's it. Yeah.
I've got stuff. But family games. Oh. I had a Wii when I was younger. Or on my PlayStation. It just wasn't. I didn't go on the Wii with it.
Which is a shame because like the Wii had really good games like Extraction, but it was just it all came down to marketing and how Nintendo marketed it as a family entertainment system.
Though it probably did help that it lacked much of the marketing push that the first Dead Space enjoyed. As if trying to make up for Extraction's losses, EA would later port the game to the PlayStation 3 in January of 2011.
The superior version, in my opinion.
So that it could be played with either DualShock or Move controllers.
The Move controllers are great with this game. I fucking kid you not, that's how I played it.
Damn it. Gotcha. You see, that wasn't so hard.
That's what she said.
Careful, Officer Anderson. I might report you for sexual harassment.
In October of 2010, developers Megatube and Sumo Digital would release Dead Space Ignition for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. A choose-your-own-adventure style motion comic punctuated by mini-games, Ignition would be scorned for vacillating greatly in difficulty, as well as the poorness of its artwork and plot. After proving that Dead Space could radically switch genres and still retain its essence with Extraction, Ignition felt completely at odds with the tenets and quality of the rest of its series. But to a large extent, it didn't matter, because Ignition, along with a novel, a new comic book series, and a second animated film, were all part of another promotional blitz, this time for the upcoming release of Dead Space 2.
My personal favorite.
For the second entry in the horror series, Dead Space's shareholders wanted to provide players with a slightly more varied action-oriented experience. After giving the series the leeway to establish itself, EA wanted to try and make Dead Space appeal to as large an audience as possible. Horror games historically didn't sell strongly, and EA wasn't in the market of selling anything less than a bestseller. Meanwhile, Visceral wanted to try and capture the sense of exuberance present in Resident Evil 4's over-the-top cutscenes, having wanted, but been unable to do so during the development of the original Dead Space, as well as accommodate for fans more easily scared than others. In his 2011 interview with Gamasutra, Wright Bagwell would explain that after the first game's release, the team received feedback from many players who expressed that they genuinely loved Dead Space 1, yet simultaneously felt unmotivated to continue playing it on account of how continuously terrifying it was. Visceral wanted to keep Dead Space scary and atmospheric. Such tenets were non-negotiable, but felt that they could still do so while giving players a chance to breathe every now and then. The team also wanted to break narrative ground and provide a voice for Isaac Clarke. While Isaac screamed and panted plenty during the first game, he never uttered a single word on his tour through hell. With their sequel, Visceral felt that continuing as such would be a waste, with Bagwell stating that if Isaac didn't really have anything to say about what was going on, then the statement Visceral would have made about the franchise is that there's a sort of ignorance on the character and player's part about the events they've experienced before.
Oh, he really just
and they
asked
didn't want
questions.
that. They wanted Isaac to have an opinion about his predicament and ownership over what he wanted to do within it. Thus, when Dead Space 2 would launch on high-definition consoles and the PC in January of 2011, players found plenty to like and dislike over its predecessor.
I know you're confused right now.
Okay.
I can explain everything, but you gotta trust me, okay? Listen, you're in terrible, terrible danger.
Straight through the heart, a necromorph, buddy, you just got right fucked. Right, so here's the thing with Dead Space 2. I actually prefer Dead Space 2 over Dead Space 1. Like, preferably, if I was to pick my favorite, it would be Dead Space 2. Here's the thing. I don't think that Dead Space 2 has a better atmosphere than Dead Space 1. Dead Space 1 has a better claustrophobic atmosphere. Though they both take place in space, Dead Space 2 was a space station on one of the asteroids on near Titan. The one thing they did do with Dead Space 2, which was way more than Dead Space 1, was the disturbing atmosphere. Like, they went full bore fucking body horror, like, just absolute subtext. Like, in Dead Space 1, there is there's obviously mutated babies, but the thing is, with Dead Space 1, like, you see them in these big giant tubes and giant cubes in the wall filled with liquid. So, like, there's kind of, so you don't necessarily like put that connection. There's kind of like that disconnect. You see them in tubes, so you're kind of thinking science, experiment. You're thinking like that kind of thing, like were they really alive? That kind of thing. So there's a disconnect. In this game, you straight up see a baby, a mutated baby walking towards its mother and then exploding, turning her into chunky kibble.
Huh.
You see that. You see children. You see necromorphed children running after your ass in hordes. You see the inside of the Church of Scientology, one of the main antagonists of this series. And what they're doing, where they're actually freezing necromorphs, as well as freezing dead bodies to be necrotized. Like, they go more deep inside of the grotesque nature and the like in this game, in my opinion, than they did in Dead Space 1. Which is what amplifies it for me. I wanted just to show how high of a functioning sociopath I am. Or psychopath, sorry. That's kind of what I wanted. If they couldn't go full, or because they'd already done it all in Dead Space 1. Like, I think they played knew enough their entire playbook. Outside of the Church of Scientology, sorry, my apologies. It's not the Church of Scientology, I apologize.
L. Ron Hubbard.
L. Ron Hubbard. Shit, L. Ron Hubbard was right all along. It really was aliens. Aliens. We're all psychopaths. Yes, we are. But when you're inside the church, that's that's to me the peak of the horror in this game. But like, they just go more in depth. Like, like I say, Dead Space 1 feels like they use their entire playbook for like atmospheric horror. Where with this one, we want to go full bore graphic horror.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you don't see that. Like, let's just say this. In Dead Space 1, the most you see is two guys get killed silhouetted in the first room. You see Hammond get turned into a fucking broken Jenga set when he gets body slammed on the ground. And you see Kendra get fucking just floor wiped. I kid you not, floor wiped by a big giant tentacle before being thrown into the side of a goddamn ship. That's the most you see. That's really the most graphic you see in Dead Space, aside from the necromorphs themselves. But in this game, you see this shit. Like, you see this shit in this game quite a bit more.
I know you're confused right now.
Unitology. Unitology in this game, which is the religion around Marcus, is basically parodying Scientology. You see more of this shit in Dead Space 2 than Dead Space 1.
The game sees Isaac awaken in an insane asylum deep within the Sprawl, a civilian space station built into the last remaining fragment of Titan, one of Saturn's moons.
Oh, it is Titan.
After a necromorph outbreak frees him from his confinements, Isaac is immediately beset by confusing and disturbing hallucinations, harassing
and they
his
also go for
mind
more
no matter
psychological
where he
horror
turns.
as well. But
Determined to put an end to the madness around him, both real and illusory, Isaac suits up and sets out to confront his demons across the station.
The only thing I appreciate
All
it
the
as
while
well as
coming
Isaac doesn't
repeatedly
take no
into
shit.
contact with Nolan Strauss, a crazed scientist, and Ellie Langford, a pilot who insists on surviving the outbreak by herself. To some, Dead Space 2's campaign, which featured many of the same weapons, mechanics, and challenges as the first game, but relied much more heavily on bombastic set pieces and highly scripted moments than before, was too much of an aberration over what had drawn them into the series. For many others, however, it was a rare example of a horror sequel whose newfound emphasis on action made it even better than its predecessor.
Oh yeah.
To them, Dead Space 2 was not unlike to Dead Space 1 what Resident Evil 4 had been to its own predecessors years prior.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that. I disagree with when people say that, because Resident Evil 4 was not fucking scary. Resident Evil 4 was not scary. The only thing scary in Resident Evil 4 was the goddamn regenerators, and that was mainly because of the fucking noise they made. The heavy breathing. Like, the fucking noise they made was the only thing scary about that. Nothing else about Resident Evil 4 was scary. There is lots to be afraid of in Dead Space 2. Like, that to me is a lot more terrifying. And they also they throw a lot of motherfuckers at you in this game. A lot more. You're right hand comes
athletic
out.
iteration of a decidedly slower paced experience that didn't lose sight as to why the latter was slower paced to begin with. If there was one thing that the game's supporters and detractors agreed upon,
I agree.
It was that the game's new multiplayer mode, Outbreak, wasn't up to snuff. Many games during Dead Space 2's era featured multiplayer components included with traditional
multiplayer for Dead Space was completely
as an
unbalanced.
effort on the part of publishers
like
EA
ridiculously
to try and bolster their
unbalanced to one side. Like people, I don't, you wouldn't know this, but I think a lot of people, maybe you do, maybe you would actually, because did you play Left 4 Dead 2 multiplayer versus mode? Anybody who's played original versus mode, or even Killing Floor 2's versus mode, will understand how when it came out, it was so fucking skewed to the infected sides to win. Think of that, but even a more extreme degree for Dead Space 2. Like, it was skewed so one fucking side, it's unbelievable.
Selling them upon completion. Not all of them were disappointing, but Dead Space 2's, which received code and basic setup from the Ripper's multiplayer mode, was, with critics decrying it for lacking the sense of tension or pacing featured in the game's single-player campaign.
At least that was my experience.
In contrast, Dead Space, an iOS game released concurrently to Dead Space 2, would prove an unlikely hit. Developed by Iron Monkey Studios, the mobile title features gameplay almost identical to that of the original Dead Space, reworked to function entirely with touch controls.
Shockingly
Critics
good.
would come away immensely impressed with how successfully it managed to compress the series staples down to the iPhone's limiting format, while losing as little of their appeal as possible.
A shockingly great title.
Towards the end of Dead Space 1's development, Visceral had briefly experimented with including a cooperative multiplayer mode in the game. Visceral Games had long wanted to follow in System Shock 2's footsteps, which also featured cooperative play, and EA wanted to bolster all of their game's value with some form of multiplayer component. However, as revealed in a 2017 investigation into Dead Space 3's development by Eurogamer's Chris Pratt, the mode was scrapped once it became apparent that it would cost too much money and upend the rest of the game's development. Extraction's low technological overhead as a Wii rail shooter made it easy to include co-op, but when Dead Space 2 came around, the decision was made to go with the competitive Onslaught mode instead, out of the belief that it would be cheaper and less difficult to implement. When the gears on Dead Space 3's development began turning, the co-op question reared its head once more, and the team decided to finally do it. But this time, they would build the entire game from scratch with it in mind, so that it could be implemented properly and meaningfully. Pratt's investigation would reveal that the team originally wanted players to play through the game as Isaac and Shadow Isaac, a visual representation of Isaac's alter ego disguised as a seemingly unrelated character. The two would brave the game's campaign together, perceiving different events as they progressed in order to incite conversation and confusion, before Shadow Isaac's identity would be revealed in a Fight Club-esque twist at the game's conclusion.
But it sounds awesome.
It was a novel idea, designed to probe deeply into Isaac's slipping grip on reality and provide a deeper and darker experience than anything players had experienced before. Visceral understood that including a second playable character in a horror game automatically lessens the sense of tension felt when playing in isolation, and thus wanted to make sure that the intensity of the game would more than make up for that. Unfortunately, EA felt uncomfortable about making a game that leaned so heavily into the realm of psychosis, and instead pushed the studio to ditch its darker undertones and move more deeply into the realm of action than before. Visceral didn't have much room to negotiate. At 4 million units sold, Dead Space 2 had done very well by any normal video game company's measurement of success, but by EA standards, it had underperformed.
4 million fucking units! Underperformed. 4 million fucking units! Underperformed. Let that sink in.
That's stupid.
I gotta say it a third time. 4 fucking million!
I know. Yeah, for example.
Like, holy shit. Like, I'm not saying it's rare to find a game that sells 4 million fucking units, but, like, that is not, even for a sequel, that's not a lot. Like, I'm trying to think, 1 second. I'm very curious. Sorry, there's something I need to check. I need to double check something. Because I honestly think that by December 2019, Resident Evil 2 had sold 5.8. And by 2020, it sold 7.8. But let me see what Dead Space's current sales are, if I can find them. I'm very, very curious what its current sales totals are. Because here's the thing. The one thing, and I'm not going to lie, I honestly think they hid the number. Because you past 2017, you can't find, and I promise you can't find anything past 2017 that tells you how many to this day that Dead Space 2 has sold. Because all you keep seeing is the 4 million units, 4 million units, 4 million units. But I guarantee you right now that number probably breaking to around 6 million. Like maybe more as of today. That this game has probably sold over 6 million units. Still a failure. I'm very curious. Let's see what else was a fail. Let's see what else. I'm very curious. Very curious how many this sold. One game in particular, because, they pump this shit out damn near yearly, so I'm very curious how many this sold. Sorry, my phone is being fucking autistic. Come on, hurry the Amadeus, it was because I just played. It was just because I was streaming Hell of a Boss. That's it. That's the only thing I broke. Copyright. Yeah. Battlefield 5 sells 7.3 million copies, but doesn't meet expectations. It's ridiculous. And Battlefield 5 is a shit game.
For the franchise to remain afloat, former EA executive Frank Gibeau would state in June of 2012 that Dead Space 3 needed an audience of about 5 million. Its target was only 1 million copies apart, but to critics, the difference between Dead Space 3 and its predecessor...
And he would have got it. I'm not kidding. I think if they went with the original idea, Dead Space 3 would have sold 5 million. But the problem is, I think they have to go by quarterly, but I guarantee you it would have reached 5 million. Because this has reached I think Dead Space 3, let me find the... Sorry for pausing a lot. Give me a second. Let's see. I'm very curious. Because EA does not like releasing the numbers of sales. Because they don't want people to realize how full of shit they are. Because I can't even find the numbers for Dead Space 3.
Would feel a million more.
Eyes forward, Isaac. Pay attention.
Released in February of 2013, Dead Space 3 follows Isaac and Sergeant John Carver, Isaac's co-op partner, on a mission to find Ellie, who has become missing in action somewhere within the icy planet of Tal Volantis. Lashed at every turn by necromorphs, crazed zealots, and the biting cold of the tundra, Isaac and Carver's journey into Tal Volantis' depths only becomes more and more daunting the deeper they go, with the two ultimately forced to stop a necromorphic cataclysm on a scale unlike anything humanity has seen prior.
If you play Dead Space 3, you need to play it co-op, otherwise you're missing a quarter of the story.
Dead Space 3 would still receive positive reviews, but critics would be more tepid this time around. The game continued to possess the same dazzling production values that made the series' previous titles so seductive, as well as the same frantic yet satisfying loop that came with hacking apart necromorphs. The inclusion of human enemies, however, as well as a cover mechanic not dissimilar to that of
screw the
Gears
human
of War,
enemies in this game,
would
that
prove
I'll
less
admit.
popular, as with the game's story, which many felt lacked much of the psychological intrigue or tenseness that so strongly characterized past titles. Carver would be derided for being flat and uninteresting, and the cooperative mode he co-led, despite still including some clever moments where Isaac and Carver would perceive things differently, would generally be written off as inferior compared to the experience of playing solo.
Now, as far as Carver being flat, I disagree with that. Mainly because that's one of the reasons why I turn around and say you need to play it co-op. Because playing it co-op gives you Carver's side of the story. And when you see Carver's side of the story, it makes more sense why he is the way that he is. So, you know, him being flat, I feel like is kind of an understatement of his character. Understatement of his character. I think he's a better character than people lay him on to be.
Finally, much heat would be directed at the game's crafting system.
You want flat? You want a genuinely flat character in this? Look at oh fuck's sake, the dude who betrays you in that game. I can't remember his fucking name. He's so blind I can't remember his name. He is the flat character. Carver isn't.
A small repertoire of weapons, each with their own outlined strengths and weaknesses. Dead Space 3 allows players to use scavenged resources to infinitely craft and modify an utterly customized weapon of their choice for use in combat. However, in a move prompted by EA, the game also allows players to directly pay for resources they lack using microtransactions. While not an absolutely game-breaking feature, this, and the game's many other frustrations, would together amount to an experience that, while by no means bad, was no longer scary.
There you go. That's when EA forced the microtransactions. Now, here's the thing. I actually like being able to craft my own weapons. Morton, that's it. Morton. He's the flat character. Morton, yes, he is the one. Here's the thing. I like customizing my own weapons. I like the idea of being able to change a assault rifle into a assault rifle, or a double barrel shotgun. Literally, one shotgun underneath, one shotgun on top. I love that idea. I like it. Do you want to know what would have helped the system if it didn't have universal ammo? See, the problem that killed this system for me was the fact that it was universal ammo. If they turned around and said to you, you get two base weapons or grips, because it always starts with the grip. If they just turned around and said, okay, you get 2 grips, that's all you're gonna get. But you can make any kind of gun you want. You can make a line gun, you can make a assault rifle, you can make a flamethrower, you can make whatever you want. Okay? But we're not going to give you universal ammo. We're going to give you handgun ammo, we're going to give you machine gun ammo, flamer fuel, shotgun shells, energy cells. We're going to give you all of these weapon types. We're going to give you the ability to create any weapon, but you're still going to find all the ammo for all the various kinds of guns. So, hypothetical situation thrown towards you. You're rocking a shotgun and an assault rifle. You are down to half ammo on the shotgun and you're fuck out on the assault rifle. But you are plush with energy weapons, with energy cells. What do? Or if there's a bench nearby, you go to that bench and you craft a fucking energy weapon.
Yeah, I get the point. Yeah, a lot easier.
And it's resource management as well, especially considering higher difficulties tend to limit the amount of ammunition you can have. It adds that spice of, okay, I have this much ammo left and I know I'm this far away from a bench where I can craft a new gun. Or craft it into a gun that I have ammo for. So I need to be very productive with my ammunition from point A to point B so I can get to point C.
Would be a lot easier.
But in this, the problem is there's universal ammo. It's just ammo for everything. You want to add that tension. They could have done that. But instead, it's universal ammo for everything. A game that actually does that really well, that kind of forces you to switch weapons on the go all the time, Doom Eternal. Doom Eternal puts your ammunition by half from what was in Doom 2016. Just so the cunts could turn around and say, hey, use a different weapon. It's their way of just yelling at the player, hey, don't fuck, try a different gun.
3 had lost its series identity.
She survived that. Oh, yeah, that's the other thing. The one thing I don't like about Dead Space 3, Isaac survived some bullshit in this game. He survived some shit in this game, Isaac, from 1 and 2 wouldn't have survived.
Would be made up for by strong sales were in store for disappointment. With EA announcing in a financial call the following May that both it and Crysis 3 had come in below their projected forecasts. At roughly 600,000 copies sold, Dead Space 3 was still the top-selling game for the month in which it released, but it was well below the 5 million unit bar Frank Gibeau had set for it the year prior. Critics' half-hearted opinions on the game had struck hard with potential buyers and tanked whatever shot it had at hitting its sales target. Shortly thereafter, EA's former chief design officer Patrick Soderlund would state in July that while the horror series remained close to their hearts, a 4th entry in Isaac Clarke's saga was not in production. In a 2018 interview with Eurogamer, Ben Waynat would reveal that despite never being realized, many ideas as to what Dead Space 4 would have entailed were outlined at Visceral after 3's release. Rather than take place in a single fixed location, Visceral's story team wanted Dead Space 4 to involve the player treading through the galaxy on a spaceship in search of a way to end the necromorph apocalypse, surviving day by day as they scavenged for supplies, collected survivors, and fought off other infected ships.
Mass Effect 3.
The game would have allowed players to progress through it in a more non-linear fashion than previous entries and featured a wide variety of derelict spacecraft to explore, with each one possessing its own unique look, layout, and gameplay opportunities. Weapon crafting would have been more realistic. Necromorphs would have been a greater threat in zero-G environments, and thanks to Dead Space 3's open-ended conclusion, the game's protagonist could have been someone other than Isaac,
Nope.
with Waynat personally expressing that he had always envisioned players inhabiting Ellie's shoes in Dead Space 4.
Hell yeah. You owe me an eye, you bastard!
And you got
While
the
these
eye.
tantalizing ideas would ultimately be cast aside, EA would continue to keep Visceral busy, handing them the reins of several significant projects after closing the door on Dead Space. The first was Battlefield Hardline, a cops and robbers iteration of EA Dice's seminal first-person shooter series.
It's not that bad.
The game would receive a positive yet unenthusiastic reception when it would launch in March
The
of
single player
2015,
isn't that bad.
with pundits praising Hardline's multiplayer offerings while criticizing its single-player campaign for lacking focus. The second was an action-oriented Star Wars game. According to a 2017 investigation into its development by Kotaku's Jason Schreier,
Yeah,
Visceral
Star Wars
originally conceived
1313.
making an open-world game codenamed Yuma. However, after famed game designer Amy Hennig joined Visceral in April of 2014, the project drastically changed direction, morphing into an Uncharted-like action-adventure game codenamed Ragtag. Excitement for the project was high after watching the action-adventure-oriented Star Wars 1313 get tragically canceled in 2013. Fans were ravenous for a similar type of experience, and Visceral Games and Hennig seemed the best team to deliver it.
Then coming in 2018 is a new action-adventure game from Visceral Games. Amy Hennig and team are creating an original narrative in the Star Wars universe with new characters.
Unfortunately, despite repeatedly claiming for years that Ragtag was progressing smoothly, EA would unexpectedly announce in October of 2017 that Visceral Games was shutting down, and that development of their Star Wars game would begin anew at EA Vancouver.
Rest in peace.
Patrick Soderlund would claim that these decisions were made on account of them listening to what kinds of games players wanted, and deciding that the project needed to become a broader experience, one that would allow for greater agency and replayability.
You know what's so funny about that comment? That comment has been proven to be absolute bullshit. Because despite that comment, and despite EA turning around saying that no one wants single player story games anymore, single player games are thriving like Doom Eternal. And hell, one of their own games, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, sold multi-millions of copies. Just proving them to be the most out of touch, next to Activision, the most out of touch fucking company ever.
Many took so to suggest that the company wanted to rework the title into a multiplayer-centric games-as-a-service experience, leading to widespread postulation that Ragtag and Visceral's death were representative of EA and the rest of the AAA industry having become soured on single-player games. However, EA's CEO Andrew Wilson would push back on this, claiming in November the project was cancelled solely so that they could make what gamers would enjoy the most. Meanwhile, Schreier's aforementioned investigation
remember Glitch, they did shut down a BioWare studio.
Regardless, Visceral's Star Wars project was beguiled by many other problems. In addition to its scope perpetually dwarfing the amount of staff assigned to it, EA often nipped at Visceral's heels for not including more iconic Star Wars characters into its narrative. Both these grievances and many others, including friction between Amy Hennig and the rest of Visceral, and difficulties working with the game's engine, severely hamstrung Ragtag's creation, and were the main causes behind both it and Visceral's collapse.
I think this was when they were trying to mandate using Frostbite for everything as well. A Frostbite engine is predominantly an FPS engine.
At the end of Eurogamer's 2018 expose into what Dead Space 4 would have entailed, Ben Waynat would state that Visceral Games had a plan in mind as to how the game would have ended, but that he didn't want to spoil it, on the off chance that EA might revive it one day.
It's not gonna happen, Matt.
Instead, he cryptically teased that Visceral's creative team had spent some time figuring out the ultimate purpose of both humans and necromorphs in the series' dark universe, and that while players would most likely be able to find a way to overcome the latter once and for all, they might be sorry once they finally did, stating that sometimes you're better off with the devil you know. If there's anything good that came out of the Dead Space series' untimely end, it's that it likely spared many of its characters a fate worse than death. For everyone else, however, it's hard to find a silver lining that resulted from its abandonment. A historic horror franchise was lost. The game that was supposed to make up for its absence was canceled, and the team that helped realize both was let go. All of Visceral's former employees who managed to land jobs following its closure will undoubtedly continue to make the most of their time at their studios, imbuing the strong design acumen they cultivated developing Dead Space and Ragtag into whatever projects they work on in the future. But the exact consortium of talent that helped conceive Isaac Clarke's terrifying adventures is gone. And while stranger things have happened, Dead Space 3's underwhelming reception all but guarantees that EA won't attempt to bring them or their flagship series back anytime soon.
the only way that I can confirm that Dead Space 4 would ever happen is if they remastered 1, 2, and 3 and re-released them, like they're doing with Mass Effect.
Thank you for watching our video. Our documentaries are crowdfunded and made possible by your continued support for us. We'd like to thank by name the generous patrons who have pledged to our highest reward tier. Alex Moretti, Darirap Sigurdsson, EmuMovies.com, Jefferson Dos Santos Oliveira, Maktoum Saeed Al Maktoum, Nick, Timur Turisbekov. If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing to our channel and joining us on Patreon. Thank you.
They have an eye for talent. They just don't have the brains to utilize said talent. You're gonna have to .ex me, dude, because I'll do it next week. You're gonna have to .ex me. I'll watch it next week, media. But yeah, so I just want to appreciate. Like, again, this is kind of what the whole Let's Appreciate series is about. It's highlighting content creators who put so much effort into not only the research, but also the production, the narration, everything in total. This is a man who was making who made good use of his Patreon money.
Not to Israel.
The one and only cunt yourself, Pato. Brilliant. Fucking brilliant. Like, this team is fantastic. Hold up. I gotta pause there. Because that right there. The tragedy of Anthem. The tragedy of Anthem. Oh god, that is a can of worms. If I will make sure you are here, I will do that on a weekend I can get you down here, or a Friday that I can get you down here. I'm gonna make sure we do that because I want that is the exemplar example of the problems with gaming industry right now. I kid you not, but it's even better considering they finally officially killed the game. That game's barely over a year old, and it's dead. Like, they've officially cancelled all support. Wait, is it over? No, I think it's 2 years old. I think it came out in 2018. My apologies. Give me a sec. Let's just say this: Call of Duty Black Ops Black Ops 4 came out in 2018. Still got a player base. Second. No, it didn't. It came out in 2019. And it's dead already. Like, they officially axed the game saying Anthem 2.0 is not happening, will never happen, shall never happen. Because Daddy EA got really pissed at us for wasting like 4 fucking years of development and having nothing but a dick in our hands when they came to collect the game. The one instance I can turn around and defend EA is Anthem. EA did absolutely nothing wrong with Anthem. I would say the one mistake EA made with Anthem is they were not tough on BioWare. They weren't giving BioWare tough love, which is what they needed.
Yeah, man, that sucks.
Yeah. But can something... God damn it, Blitz. Could something truly die if it was never alive? There's a fair point. Alright, guys. But that is where I'm going to end it. I hope you did all enjoy this idea. What do you guys think? Before we sign off, and while I'm setting to fix some things because I need to sort out everything for this. What do you guys think of this? The Let's Appreciate format. Do you like it? like, and that's like it's not like this guy hasn't got a lot of subscribers. In fact, actually, I think if I remember correctly, I don't think he has as many as you think. Oh, I don't think they have as many as you think. I mean, they're like, it's a great channel, but they've not even cracked over 500,000. Like, with the production and everything that they put into this, I'd have expected them to be like a million plus sub channel, and they deserve it. They really do. Like, this channel deserves to be a million sub plus channel. Alright, but yeah, that's where I'm going to end it, ladies and gentlemen, for today's Let's Appreciate. Next week is going to be the Let's Survive Part 1 and Part 2 of Dark Souls. The retarded run. Because there's no redemption, it's just retarded. And then Friday is going to be not Let's Play Long. Is going to be the late night cast. So next night should be fun. Alright, so yeah, with all that being said, everybody, I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all have a fantastic night, and please take care of yourselves out there, y'all.
Nice night, everyone.